Hello my loves, I am so excited for this video because I get to tell you about all of my favorite books that are undiscovered gems. So these are books that I've given 5 stars to that have under 10,000 ratings on Goodreads. There is a little bit of a recency bias here, so some of these things just came out, they haven't had enough time to get those 10,000 ratings, and I really hope they get there, but I'm gonna help them along the way, so I'm still including them. I have all different genres on this list. I've got about 15 or 16 books to get through. I have my Where's Waldo looking shirt on. We're ready to hunt for some undiscovered gems of books. Let's get into it. First up on this list is And Then I Woke Up. This is a short horror zombie novella, and it is so unlike any other zombie horror that I've read. I have kind of a special spot in my heart for zombie horror that does something like this. I love this book. I love The Girl with All the Gifts, where it's not just straight zombie gore. It has something to say about what it is to be human. My favorite zombie books are monster books, where we're trying to figure out who is human, who is not human, what this sickness is, and how it affects us. And also how we treat these people who do have this sickness reflects upon us and our humanity. This book is so interesting because the zombie affliction is that you think that there's a zombie apocalypse. So one day, you start seeing zombies come at you. Some of them are your family members, some of them are people that you love and care about, and you're in fight or flight mode. You have to start killing these zombies because they're zombies. Except the zombie affliction is not affecting the zombies, it's affecting you. So you think that some people are zombies, and it's really this narrative that is the zombie sickness, the zombie affliction. It is such an interesting look at manipulation, at media, at how narratives can control us and be so harmful to us. I really enjoyed all of the commentary that this book had about our world and how we interact with storytelling and how those stories that we are telling ourselves and that we see in the media can sometimes be really dangerous for us to believe in. And on the other hand, it's also talking about sometimes that narrative is all we have and that story is all we have to cling to, and sometimes that's better than knowing the truth. It is gonna make you think deeply. I think people either love or hate this one, and I loved it. And it was the first book that I convinced my boyfriend to read, and I think he liked it as well. Okay, complete left turn with The Girl Who Kept the Castle. This only has 131 ratings on Goodreads, and I single-handedly feel a responsibility to change that fact. I love this cozy fantasy with my whole heart. It is middle grade, but I think it's super enjoyable for adults as well. Our main character is the daughter of the groundskeeper to the Wizard West, and he is one of 4 wizards in this kingdom, except he has just died, and our main character needs to tell him that he is in fact a ghost, and he is not happy to receive that information. What follows is a quirky and whimsical competition to select his successor before people find out that he's dead, and before the kingdom collapses into magical chaos because there is no Wizard West. It's very Studio Ghibli coded. We also have some animal companions joining us, including my favorite character, the compost dragon, who is this big and powerful dragon who lays around all day and eats kitchen scraps and turns them into compost. And he's very tender and sweet, but also dangerous when he needs to be. I also want to tell you about Rat Girl. This is one of my favorite memoirs I have ever read. If you're a fan of Daisy Jones and the Six, the book, the movie, the album, I need you to read this book because it is that book, but about a real live band. This is the memoir of Kristen Hirsch while she was 18, so it's covering 1 year of her life. While she is struggling with mental illness, she is also the lead singer for the band Throwing Muses, and she finds out that she is pregnant. I read this when I was 18, and I loved every single page of it. It has that making music lyricism art in it that I loved about Daisy Jones and the Six, but this is a real story. And it also has these really important conversations about mental health and motherhood and transition periods in life and being 18 and trying to grow up and growing up too fast. And I just think it is an incredibly written memoir, and the topics that it's covering are extremely well handled. And I would highly recommend it to anyone who is, has been, or will ever be 18. Next up is a book that I think most people hate, and it's So Happy For You by Celia Lasky. It has 4,248 ratings, and its average rating is a 3.38, which is pretty low, but I loved it. I loved it so much. It is the story of a woman who is getting married and her maid of honor. The description is very accurate when it calls it manically entertaining. This book is a trip, but it is so entertaining and so fun to watch these two characters kind of spiral out of control. We're set in kind of our world, but further in the future, where marriage and weddings and all of those things have kind of reached a fever pitch. Women who are over 30 are considered rotten, and everyone is kind of obsessed with marriage and making marriage work. We end up with these brides who do these increasingly elaborate and increasingly dangerous rituals to try and make the marriage work. It goes completely off the rails, but not really in a thriller type way. Here's what I'll say. It has the spirit of an over-the-top thriller, that like really manic feeling. Our characters are kind of all a little bit insane and nothing they do really makes any sense, but without the action part of it, if that makes sense. Both of these women are a little bit insufferable, very stuck in their ways, very different, have really grown apart, but are kind of thrust back together for this maid of honor bridal situation that really feels like the cover. If you like this cover, I think you're gonna like this. It's pink, it's bold, it's a bouquet on fire. Okay, I have another horror for you, and it is The Haunting of Velwood by Gwendolyn Keast. It has 2,777 ratings on Goodreads, and it has an average rating of 3.66. I need more people to read this. I love this so much. This is my favorite type of ghost story. Our main character has not been back to the street that she grew up on in a very long time, because the street that she grew up on no longer exists. It's stuck in a time loop, and everyone who lived there are now ghosts. No one can enter this street except for our main character and her 3 friends who were there the night that this street turned into a ghost town. Now, researchers trying to investigate this paranormal situation are trying to convince her to go back, and what she finds there is so interesting. This is my favorite type of ghost story because we get explanation of why the ghosts are there and how this happened and what event kicked this off, but we don't get the explanation of how it was able to happen, if that makes sense. And that's my favorite way to read a ghost story. It's really about connection. It's about connection between our main character and this girl that she grew up on the street with, and their relationship, the things that they both went through, and their other friends and the things that they went through. And our main character is haunted by these ghosts, but she's also haunted by other things in her past, and she's coming to terms with all of it in this incredibly well-written book. The prose in here is exceptional. I loved it so much. Okay, some more nonfiction for you. I'm noticing that there's quite a lot of nonfiction on here, which is interesting. Does that mean that I read unknown nonfiction, or does that mean that people read more fiction than nonfiction? Because I feel like people who casually read, people who read like 3 books a year, only read nonfiction. But I guess if others of us are reading 30, 50 books a year, it's me all crazy and reading over 200 books a year, we, I think, primarily read fiction. Or maybe the people who are reading nonfiction just aren't rating things on Goodreads. Anyways, I think you should read Growtopia, Breaking Up the Boys Club of Silicon Valley. I read this a while ago. I think it was Ashley from Best Dressed who initially recommended this like on her Instagram, and I picked it up because I was in college going into entrepreneurship, and now I work at a startup, not in Silicon Valley, but I still work for a startup, and I was interested in reading about this. This book is so incredible. It's talking about a lot of different stats and data on women in startups and in entrepreneurship and in Silicon Valley, and how the way that we as a society have decided to select people to run these companies, people to be in these companies, is detrimental to women, and how that affects the company's ability to be a good company, and also how that affects women's ability to have and keep good jobs in those companies. It's a really excellently researched book. Our author has boots on the ground in Silicon Valley. She's experiencing these things for herself, and she's also backing up her personal hypotheses with extensive research and data. If you are someone who works in and around the startup entrepreneurship space, I think you'll really love this one. Especially because I feel like there are not a lot of books written in this space by women that aren't of the lean in variety, and I find this to be much more helpful. Okay, let's talk about a cozy graphic novel about a man and his cat. The graphic novel is titled A Man and his cat. It has 9,233 ratings. It has an average rating of 4.44, and it is delightful. It's about a man who's grieving, who adopts a little cat who nobody else wanted to adopt. He's been in the pet shop for so long, since he was a kitten, and nobody wants him, and this man wants him, and they love each other, and this man has never had a cat before, so he's honestly messing up a lot and trying to figure out how to take care of this cat, and they just have so much love for each other, and it is tender, and I cry every single time I read it. I think I must have read this 3 or 4 times now, and I'm just thinking about it, and I'm tearing up. Like, I sob tears every single time I read this because it's so heartwarming. It's so nice. I also need to recommend Feed Them Silence by Lee Mandello. I think you will see this in my top 10 books of the year this year. I put this on my most anticipated reads in 2023 and I never got around to it, but it was perfect. It is this extremely heartbreaking story of this woman who is researching one of the last known wolf packs. And the way that her research works is she is connected. She has a neural link to one of the wolves in this pack. And so she's becoming incredibly connected emotionally to this wolf. The thing that she needs to do for her research is to remain disconnected and look at this in a really scientific way, in a really analytical way. The worse the wolf pack does, the better her research findings are, the more information she can gather. But she's so connected to this wolf because she's in her head. And then the foil to that is our main character's relationship with her wife. And the way that that is really falling apart because our main character and her wife are not being emotionally intimate with each other. They are not having that connection. And so we have this one connection where our main character really needs to stay detached and objective in order for that to work. And she's putting way too much time and energy and emotion into that relationship. And on the other hand, we have this relationship with her wife where she needs to be really emotionally connected and vulnerable. And she is refusing to do that. And she's remaining disconnected and detached and not giving her wife the emotional vulnerability and attention that she needs and that they need to make that relationship work. It's only 105 pages. It really packs a punch. I thought it was incredibly, incredibly well written, and the story structure and the choice to kind of link those things up, it was just so well done. I do have a soft spot for wolves, so I think this is especially a good recommendation for me specifically, but I think 3,132 ratings is still way too low. You guys need to read this book. Next up, we have Biased. This is one of my favorite nonfictions I have ever read. I think it was either in my top 10 or my honorable mentions of last year. It's a really approachable, accessible look at unconscious bias. Our author has been a consultant for law enforcement agencies, and so she's going into these situations that can be hostile towards this topic. And she's so good at what she does because she explains everything in a way that absolutely anyone could pick up this book and find it to be really approachable, really respectful of the topic, to get her message across and to back it up with these personal examples as well as extensive research and data. She did an exceptional job. She's obviously an expert in this field, and she's also an expert at the way that she has communicated this. So if you're looking for an entry point into the topic, I think this is a great choice. I say entry point not because the information is base level. I think it is an incredibly deep dive, but entry point as in, I think it's so accessible that anyone could pick up this book and get value out of it. Next up is something that just came out, so is it fair that I put it on this list? Maybe not. It's only had a month to have readers and it already has 3,420 ratings, so it's probably gonna fall off this list, but I've seen some mixed reviews and I need you to know that I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. This book is the anti-slasher, and it is also so clear that Stephen Graham Jones loves the slasher. I love My Heart is a Chainsaw from this author, and this book is so freaking good. I cannot explain to you how much I love this. It's such a different slasher story. I feel like I've been reading a lot of these so-called a love story to the slasher genre type books, and this one is so unique and so different in the same way that My Heart is a Chainsaw was so unique and so different when it first came out, because we're following a character who is a reluctant slasher. He doesn't want to be a slasher, but he is one. We're sort of following him and his friend as they figure out the rules of the slasher that they're in and try to have some agency within that. and fight back against the slasher and retain some of their personal identity in it while they're being changed and molded by this force that is larger than them. It is absurd at times, it's funny at times, it's disgusting and gory and horror at times. And I felt so connected to all of our characters, and once again, I need more people to read it. Then we have a cozy sci-fi, which is the Cybernetic Tea Shop. This is a book that respects your time. It is listed as having 65 pages on Goodreads. I think the physical copy that I read was 115, but this says 65. It was very short, but it still allows us to get incredibly connected to both of our main characters, which are an AI who is kind of breaking down slowly as she is running this cybernetic tea shop. And we also have an AI repair woman who is kind of living the nomad life. She's drifting around. She doesn't really have a lot of connections. She likes to keep moving. And we get to know both of them and their personalities before they meet. And then we see how they meet halfway through and change each other and go through struggle together and come out of it with this beautiful relationship. And I cannot understand how Meredith Katz was able to do all of that in so few pages. Truly, truly remarkable, and such a true cozy story. I really, really love this one. And it's only got 3,645 ratings, and it's published in 2016. So this one is definitely an undiscovered gem, and I need all of you people who love cozy fantasy to pick this one up. Then we have a short story collection, which is 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart and Other Stories by Jenna Rose Nethercott. I love this author so, so, so much. I read Thistlefoot by this author, and it really stuck with me in a way that I was completely unprepared for. I feel similarly about this collection. I did not rate everything in the collection 5 stars. There were some things that I gave 2 and 3 stars, but there were just a couple of stories that stuck with me so heavily that I will continue to think about for so long. They're dark, they're fantasy. We're talking about connection and love and monsters. One of my favorite short stories of all time is The Husband Stitch by Carmen Maria Machado. There's a short story in here that really reminds me of that one. It's called Homebody, and it's set in this world where women can become houses, and it's talking about gender roles and relationships and how women are expected to be certain things and do certain things and how their identity changes as they do those things. And we're watching someone go through this process, and we're getting the body horror of that. And it's just incredibly well done. Thread Boy was also amazing. One of my favorite short stories I've ever read. If you are someone who plays a musical instrument and who has read sheet music a lot in your life, you will really get a kick out of the syntax and the grammar choices in The War of Fog. The tone of that story also really reminds me of Deathless by Catherine Valente, which is one of my favorite books of all time. I could talk for ages about this book, but we have other things to get to, so I'm just gonna let you read the stories yourself. Just know that most of them I adored. It came out in February, and it's only got 1,400 ratings, and I would love to see more people pick this up. I know Thistlefoot was pretty big because it was a book of the month book, but I really need people to pick this up as well. So all you short story collection lovers, grab this one. Another memoir for you, What Have I Done, is an incredible story of our author Laura Dockrell's struggle with postpartum psychosis. It only has 610 ratings, which is honestly criminal. It came out in May of 2020, so the launch was very much overshadowed by the pandemic and everything that happened, but I really desperately need more people to pick this up, because if you like books along the line of Know My Name that are covering really difficult topics but are incredibly vulnerable in the way that they are written and incredibly introspective and really, really well written, this is, I think, on the same tier as that book in my opinion. Postpartum psychosis is something that I have a family history of. As I am considering children, it's something that I had a lot of questions about and something that I'd never really seen talked about in books or otherwise. And so to have Laura Dockrell take the time to go back into a headspace where she was really not okay and to share how she was feeling in those moments, and she made a really hard decision to write the book as she was feeling in those moments. So it's not written with this looking back, oh, obviously this was not accurate, but this is what my brain was telling me. She's telling us like it was. She's explaining how it was to feel those feelings and to think those thoughts in that moment. And it was incredibly powerful and really kind of gave me all the information that I feel like I was lacking to get a grasp of what postpartum psychosis is and how it affects people. So if you're someone who's considering having children one day, I would really, really recommend reading this book. Or even if you're supporting someone who has a child, I really highly recommend reading this. One of my favorite graphic novel series of all time is Lightfall. The first book is The Girl and the Galdurian. It only has 9,508 ratings. It came out in 2020. I need every child and every adult to read this. I really wish that this had existed when I was growing up because it talks about so many important topics about how to do things that you're scared of and how to do hard things and how to deal with anxiety, how to grapple with what the right thing is to do and what to do if you end up making the wrong choice, and how that's part of being a human. And it's also incredibly entertaining. There's a little cat animal companion. We have this Galdurian figure who is this golden retriever type knight character. Our main character is this young girl. She's looking for her grandfather, who's the pig wizard. The magic of the world is at stake. We're going on lots of adventures. It is so sweet, so whimsical, so entertaining. And it's also covering these really important topics, and it's using the art in the story as well to teach those lessons. So when our main character is feeling really anxious and really stressed, the background gets darker, and when she's receiving the comfort and the reassurance that she needs, the background gets lighter again. I think it's executed really fantastically, and I always have a lovely time when I'm reading it. I think the art style is beautiful, and I can't wait to read it to my kids one day. Our final nonfiction on the list is A Little Devil in America by Hanif Abdurraqib, and I'm so excited to read more from this author because the way that this essay collection flowed and was put together, I was underlining things. I have favorite essays that have come out of this. I learned a lot about Black performance. I learned a lot about these topics that our author is teaching us about, but it also reads like poetry. Like, you can really tell that this author is a poet because the words are just so beautiful to consume. The prose is so fantastic. I wish I wasn't on vacation here so that I could break out my copy of this and read you some quotes, but I'll link a video in the description of where I did just that because it's just so beautifully written, and I guarantee that will convince you to read it. And the last thing I have on this list is something that I'm promising to reread because I don't feel like I can give you an accurate review of this because I read it so long ago. It has just under 6,000 ratings. It was published in '96, and I read it my freshman year of college, which was 7 years ago now. So I really would like to revisit this because I remember this book sticking with me so much so that this is one of the books that when I started my channel, I went back through my bookshelf of things that I had kept and I input a few select 5 stars because I knew I wanted a record that I had read these. So I definitely need to reread this. I'm going to read you the description from Goodreads, but I'm promising to you that I'm going to reread this because I feel like I should be talking about this more, and I want to reaffirm that it is something that I love because I don't feel like I have remembered enough of it. Does that ever happen to you where you know that something was fantastic and you know that it had an impact on you as a person, but you don't remember enough of the plot to accurately describe it to other people? Let me read you this description. This is about teenage surf bum Gunnar Kaufman who is forced to wise up when his mother moves from suburban Santa Monica to urban West Los Angeles. There he begins to undergo a startling transformation from neighborhood outcast to basketball superstar, and eventually to reluctant messiah of a divided, downtrodden people. A bombastic coming-of-age novel that has the uncanny ability to make readers want to laugh and cry at the same time. Beatty mingles horrific reality with wild fancy in this outlandish, laugh-out-loud, funny and poignant vision of contemporary America. I believe this won the Man Booker Prize, and I recently picked up Tough by the same author because once again I knew I love this book so much that I wanted to read more from this author, but I think I'm gonna reread this one first because I think it's time. Okay, that is everything that I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to my undiscovered gems that I wanted to share with you all. I would love to hear in the comments both your underrated faves and your undiscovered faves. So let me know things that not enough people have read, and also let me know things that everyone seems to hate that you adored, because I would love to do a part 2 of this where I read things that I give a super high rating to that the average rating for is super low. So let me know your favorites in that category as well. Okay, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I will see you next week. We are doing a 24-hour readathon, which I am so excited about. I've already filmed it and it was interesting. I was very delirious and very sleep deprived, so you have that to look forward to next week. I will see you then. Bye.